Hare Krishna, everyone, and welcome back once again to our ever ongoing series on the glories of our most beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So before beginning today's class, I would like to offer a beautiful prayer to Srila Prabhupada. It's actually a poem written by a Brajbasi whose name was Ramdas. He writes, "My dear spiritual master, O mercy of the Lord, please save me from the thorny clutches of Maya. One who serves your lotus feet attains every goal in life. Your seat is above those of kings. Thus all royalty and saints seek shelter at your lotus feet. Continuously repeating Krishna's names, your voice vanquishes all suffering. I was drowning in a deep ocean of illusion, but one day you reached out and brought me to the shores of reality." Ramdas says, "I bow down to the lotus feet of my spiritual master, which are the source of all divinity in this material world." Wow, thank you. So, we're continuing with our mini-series on stimulation for ecstatic love, and this will be part 139, in which we will continue our discussions on Radha and Krishna's disguises. So many classes on disguises. Now, the following pastime is adapted from Sangita Madhava, chapter 8, by Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati. So, one time, anticipating where Srimati Radharani would bathe in the Jamuna, Krishna hid himself within a cluster of blue lotus flowers. That's his disguise today. He hid himself within a cluster of blue lotus flowers in the river and waited until Radharani and her friends arrived at a nearby bathing ghat. And soon Sri Radha and the gopis arrived and entered the water that's described joking, splashing, and of course talking about Krishna. But when Sri Radha strayed into somewhat deeper water near the cluster of blue lotuses, she soon got the scare of her life. She was swimming peacefully and again her mind absorbed in thoughts of Krishna when suddenly this cluster of blue lotuses in front of her exploded with a roar and showered her with water, lotus leaves, and foam. Water, lotus leaves, and foam. In your mind's eye you can see. So, of course, Sri Radha was startled, and she thought, what is this? A demon? A crocodile? Or what? A demon? A crocodile? Or what? And she screamed for help. But as soon as things calmed down, she saw Krishna floating in the water nearby, smiling and laughing on the joke he just played on her. But for Sri Radha, this was no joking matter. And so her fear quickly turned into anger. And she immediately turned her back on Krishna, waded out of the water, and ran into the Vrindavan forest, followed by her equally upset friends. So Krishna was left alone, standing shoulder deep in the Jamuna, and very disappointed that Sri Radha had taken the joke so personally. So he waded back to the shore and sat down on the riverbank completely dejected, wondering how he could pacify Sri Radha's anger. This theme is always coming up in Vrindavan. Now, as we've often discussed, Sri Radha's anger is never easy to appease. Of course, we should be careful not to think of her anger in a mundane or a material way. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 14, text 197, explains, Stanada Radhi Grahane Hrit Prita Vapi Sambramat Bahi Krodovya Titavat Proktam Kuta Mitam Bodai. Quote, when the border of her sari and the cloth of her face are caught by Krishna, she externally appears offended and angry, but within her heart she is very happy. Learned scholars call this attitude kutamita, kutamita. Beautiful. I was reading the other night that when Sri Radha's experiencing man or anger, she often, pouts in her room in either Varshana or Yavat. And when Krishna manages to approach either of those places and knock on her chamber door, Radharani refuses to speak to him. So he always tries to plead with her through the door. Now, Sri Rupa Goswami, quoting a devotee named Sri Govardhanacharya, reveals this, or writes about this in Padyavali, verse 243, that one time in Yavat, one of Radharani's girlfriends who was attending her stormed out angrily from the room when Krishna was trying to speak through and said to Krishna, strongly, Sri Radha is completely drenched in the brilliant red color of love, exactly like a gunja seed. O expert word juggler, Krishna, her love is not like your love, which is exactly like the red, tiny color on the parrot's beak. That's really beautiful, Padyavali. So, that gopi is saying that Sri Radha's love for Krishna is complete and intense, like the vivid red that dominates a gunja seed. And in contrast, Krishna's love for Radha appears minimal, like the faint red tint on a parrot's beak. It's all about love. Now, back to the pastime, where Krishna surprised Sri Radha in the Jamuna River. So Krishna was sitting on the banks of the Jamuna, deeply absorbed in thought of how to pacify Sri Radha, when suddenly Srimati Vrindadevi, who with Purnamasi arranges all these pastimes, happened to walk by with a number of her assistants, who, it's described, were carrying a variety of clothes and ornaments on their way to a forest storehouse. We've talked about those forest storehouses where she keeps different paraphernalia to be used in the particular pastimes that take place in that part of the Vrindavan forest. So she's walking along with her associates. So seeing them, Krishna smiled, and he thought, this must be the hand of fate. Of course, there's no fate or destiny in Braj. It's all pastimes again arranged by Purnamasi and Vrinda, but here we go. He said, this must be the hand of fate. And approaching Vrindadevi, he described his predicament. He said, O Devi, please help me regain Sri Radha's favor. So Vrindadevi smiled and very quickly came up with a solution. And what was that? Well, with the clothes her servants were carrying, she and her helpers dressed Krishna up as a beautiful young girl, a tactic we know that Krishna often employs. And satisfied with this disguise, Vrindadevi said, Krishna, you know what to do now. So Krishna followed the gopis' footprints deep into the Vrindavan forest, right up to the entrance of a grove where Radharani was surrounded by gopis and complaining to her friends about Krishna's trick in the Jamuna River. And suddenly she looked up and saw this new gopi standing nearby. She couldn't recognize it was Krishna. And although disguised, Krishna's sweetness and beauty enchanted Radharani and completely bewildered her mind. She suddenly felt a surge of affection for this new dark-complexioned girl and at once invited her in. Radharani said, O moon-faced one, who are you? You are so sweet and beautiful. Please become my very dear friend. Wow. Please become my very dear friend. When, oh, when will that day be ours? And as Krishna entered the grove, disguised of course, Radharani noticed his or her hesitation and said, "O friend, you seem to be trembling with fear. I wonder, is this because you know that Krishna lays in wait for you somewhere in the Vrindavan forest?" Then Radha reached out and took hold of that gopi's wrist. And as soon as she did so, Shastra says, she felt exhilarated. Words stuck in her throat and her limbs went stiff. And as soon as that happened, all her friends attending to her understood who this new gopi actually was. And they all smiled in approval. And seeing her girlfriend's favorable reactions, Radharani also smiled and had no choice but to give up her man, her anger, and spend the rest of the afternoon in Krishna's blissful association in the Vrindavan forest. Hare Krishna. This is, of course, just one of the many pastimes that Radha and Krishna enjoy in Vrindavan. The Acharyas say, and I quote, "No one can count how many pastimes Radha and Krishna enjoy in Braj. Every pastime is novel, even if it happens hundreds of times, and devotees derive ever-expanding bliss hearing about them again and again and again, as we're doing." The Acharyas also point out that whenever Krishna tries to pacify Sri Radha's man or anger, ultimately, he's almost always successful in appeasing her. And they give an especially sweet example, the Acharyas. That is that one time Nanda Maharaj invited King Vrishabhanu and all the residents of Varshana to Nandagram to discuss some upcoming festivities. And that day, for some reason, Srimati Radharani, well, a specific reason, was especially angry with Krishna, having seen him with another gopi the day before. Nevertheless, she decided also to come along, and at that meeting, Krishna was sitting on one side of the assembly, while Sri Radha was on the other side of the assembly. And as discussions were going on, Krishna kept trying to attract the attention of Radha. He kept trying to get her attention. But she would have nothing to do with him, because she saw him with that gopi the day before. So at one point, the morning sun came, shining through the window. In your mind's eye you can see the sun shining, bright sun coming through the window. And taking advantage of this, Krishna came up with a very sweet way to appease Radharani's anger, even in front of all the elders present. Now this is nicely described by Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, again in his Padyavali. It's verse 242. He writes, "In order to appease Sri Radha, Krishna placed the shadow of his head at her feet, because if the sun's coming in, it can also create shadows. So in order to appease Sri Radha, Krishna placed the shadow of his head at her feet. Then she put the shadow of both her palms on the shadow of the head of Krishna." Together. In this way, both of them, seated in front of their seniors, pacified each other and relieved their, the word is used, sulkiness. And then the verse is finished. Finishes as, "May this act of conciliation by Krishna and loving forgiveness by Sri Radha be victorious in all the worlds." Hare Krishna. So much nectar. Shri Brajabhumi, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki Padam Gatim. This is our goal. So I would like to conclude today with a quote from the writings of a devotee, Raghava Sharana Das. Actually, he was an acharya in the Nimbarka Sampradaya, who says that whoever chants the following 9 names of Krishna every day while remembering the pastimes of the Lord will attain the bliss of devotion in this very lifetime. So listen carefully. He writes, "Krishna is known as Rasa Samudra, meaning he is the ocean of different rasas. He is known as Rasa Saram. He is the essence of all the rasas. Rasa Gambiram. He is the most condensed form of rasa. He is known as Rasa Mata. He's the connoisseur of all the rasas. Rasa Lolupa. He's greedy for all the rasas. Another name, Rasa Lopa. He is where all the rasas stay. Rasa Akilam. He is the storehouse of all rasa. Rasa Vivartana. He is the reason for changes in all the rasas. And finally, Rasa Sambhavam. From him, all the rasas manifest." Hare Krishna. Of course, we know Krishna has unlimited names, but I never heard those names, so we thank that author for all those nectarian names of Krishna connected to Rasa. Thank you, Prabhus. We're still on the shores of the Baltic Sea here in northern Poland with our festival tour. Actually, we just have 2 festivals left. We're simultaneously relishing and lamenting the turbulence of rasa, or devotional service, because we really enjoyed this summer. Thousands upon thousands, I'm not exaggerating, of people have come to our festivals and seen our stage show, tasted prasadam. Actually, they danced with us at kirtan at the end. Shantushti, the heart is completely satisfied. But we still have a little time left. But I'll be traveling again, and I'll be sure to be with you again next Friday. I think we have some more classes on disguises. It's a central theme. It's so nice to research it and to share it with everyone. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Of course, thank you to Srila Prabhupada, the revealer of the Dham. Shishi Gauranitai ki, Shishi Krishna Balaram ki, Shishi Radhashamba Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Shishi Gauranitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yagya ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe.